Have you ever thought about what life might be like with a corner man? You know, every time you're going through some adversity, you sit down on a stool opposite someone you trust and let them shout inspirational words at you. Shit, if I had Tommy Toehold in my corner, I might make the next season of the Contender series. I know you've seen it in films. A fighter is losing and then, just like Rocky, the corner delivers the ultimate awe-inspiring speech and they go out there like a phoenix from the ashes and get the job done. Except, wait, didn't Rocky lose the first one? Either way, I know. I mean, it sounds like the stuff that only happens in the movies, right? Well, you're wrong, jabroni, because hell yeah, that shit's happened in real life.
Hey guys, it's me, Bailey, and from MMA On Point, and today we're going to be watching the 10 most inspirational corners who coach their fighters back from defeat.
Number 10, Grant Dawson and James Krause. I don't think I've ever written a list where this man has made an entry, but I'm sure by this point, if you have been paying attention to the fight night cards, you would have seen him fight and start to make a name for himself in the UFC. Grant Dawson is currently 19-1, and he actually got into the UFC way back in 2017 after he won on the first season of the Contender Series. Since then, he's been undefeated from featherweight now up to lightweight, but let me tell you a story about his second performance of the night bonus. He was matched up against dangerous Brazilian finisher and winner of the second season of Tough Brazil, Leonardo Santos, who since joining the UFC hadn't lost in 8 years. Okay, he only had 8 fights, but that's still pretty goddamn good. At this point, Grant had been training out of Glory Fitness in MMA, where James Krause is a head coach, and after 2 rounds of grinding it out, it was anyone's fight. Also mainly because, well, not much happened, and Grant was 0 for 9 on his takedown attempts. Ding, the round's over, and enter James Krause.
Look at me, motherfucker. Look at me. Don't leave this to the judges. I want you to leave this all here. You got 5 minutes. I want you to try to knock his fucking head off. You understand me?
No messing around there from James, and Grant went out there from the opening bell to finish him. He finally got him down and kept chipping away until the 10-second clapper went. Krause was going bananas in the corner. Santos went for a heel hook, and Dawson let him have it. James and Grant hugged the shit out of each other, and Dawson took home an extra $50K. Number 9, John Jones and Mike Winklejohn. Okay, I know what you're thinking. John Jones losing in a fight? Yeah, in court maybe. But yeah, you're not wrong. In fact, he basically had a completely clean sweep all the way to the UFC title. He didn't even lose a round, really, dude. His shroud of invincibility pretty much continued until he came across the ultimate enigma. No, not Jorge Masvidal's new tattoo. I'm talking about the Karate Kid, Lyoto Machida. Technically, the 1,000-piece dragon puzzle had already been put together by Shogun Rua. But after he literally Karate Kidded Randy Couture, the UFC gave Lyoto a chance to win back his title and booked him against John Jones. Now, the first round was close. It wasn't like Lyoto was on the verge of finishing John, but he legitimately tagged him with left hands and body kicks, had him reeling backwards. Even Joe Rogan said it was the hardest John had ever been hit. Machida had drawn John into his game, and honestly, it was working, but John went back to the corner to absorb the words of wisdom from Mike Winklejohn.
Here's the deal. After you kick, he wants to shoot that straight left at you. You know what I mean? Fake the kick, lean off an angle, hit him with a 9 or a glue. All right?
And that's exactly what John did. He faked a kick and smashed Lyoto when he came into counter, which all led to the finish. That's some calm, calculated corner advice right there. Exactly what John needed to get his mind back in the right place and execute. Number 8, Carlos Condit and Greg Jackson. Here's a fun fact for you. When Carlos Condit made his pro debut in 2002, Rory McDonald was just 13 years old. But that didn't stop either of them from putting on a complete masterclass demonstration of mixed martial arts at UFC 115 though. Rory was a training partner of fellow Canadian GSP, was the youngest fighter in the UFC at just 20 years old, and was still undefeated. Most believed he was on his way to follow in St. Pierre's footsteps to the title. Joe Rogan said it best though on the broadcast. They are giving him the former WEC champion, they're not babysitting this kid. The potential greatness of Rory McDonald had only just begun to be tested, and across the first 2 rounds with Carlos, we really got to see it. By the end of the second, it was pretty clear Carlos was down 2 rounds, and this time it was the other half of the Jackson Wink team, Greg, who delivered the motivation.
You bounce, you move, and you punish this kid. This is 5 minutes or more.
My favourite part about this is when Greg's done talking to Condit, he just sticks his tongue out in response. You can tell he's all fired up and ready to tap into that natural-born killer instinct. Rogan even said right after, "I don't think I've ever seen Greg Jackson talk like that." Anyway, that's exactly what Carlos did. Went out and made it a war. Rory was basically in survival mode the entire round until Condit had just landed too much punishment and the ref stopped it with 10 seconds left. He was gonna lose if he didn't finish him, and Greg knew exactly what to say. Number 7, Kamaru Usman and Trevor Whitman. So I know what you're thinking. Until Leon Edwards happened, Kamaru Usman had pretty much been dominant throughout his UFC career. He's barely lost a round, but there was one fight that definitely didn't go according to plan at first. At UFC 258, he fought his former teammate and training partner Gilbert Burns. We'd seen footage of them sparring, and in the first round of their fight, Gilbert was able to land the exact same right hand, this time with vicious intentions, and Kamaru was put on skates. He survived through the round, but Gilbert continued to land big shots, and every judge gave it to Burns. In the corner, he got plenty of technical advice, but Trevor kept it simple.
You're a champion because you're jabbed.
Keep him high.
It's because you're jabbed, baby.
Sometimes less is more, and it's pretty clear Usman took the message on board going into the second round. Not just about jabbing, but the reminder that he's the champion. The jab totally worked though. He even dropped Burns with it, and it completely changed the narrative of the fight. This one actually went one more round, but the finish came just 30 seconds into the start of the third. These two as a pair have definitely been through the fire together, and it's no wonder Trevor won Coach of the Year that year. Number 6, Francis Ngannou and Eric Nixk. We all knew Francis had gotten better after watching the rematch with Stipe and his transformation into a completely different fighter. But we can also all agree that after seeing 4 rounds of his fight against Cyril Gane, there were even more levels of improvement he'd made under the guidance of his new coach in the US, Eric Nixk. But Cyril is an equally impressive heavyweight, and by the end of the round 4, it was officially 2 rounds apiece. Now don't forget, we know just how badly injured Ngannou was going into the fight. Eric had even asked him to pull out, and all the contract issues and disputes with the UFC and Dana White that had been going on before he'd even walked into the cage. So what Eric said before the start of the 5th round makes even more sense.
I believe in you, motherfucker. Hey, we've been through so much shit together. This is you. You understand me? This is you, kid.
I mean, goddamn, seriously, whenever the Ngannou documentary comes out, it's going to be one of the greatest stories in all of combat sports. He went back out there and put on a championship winning performance to take the 5th round from Gane and remain and still. Number 5, Georges St. Pierre and Christophe Midiou. Okay, so back in the day when George was getting into MMA as a young lad, he went and tracked down a legendary French-Canadian fighter named Christophe Midiou and asked him to be his mentor. He ended up training with him throughout most of his early career, including in his very first promotion. Here he is slamming the cage ringside while George beats the fuck out of Ivan Menjivar. If you've ever heard of the French-Canadian MMA promotion TKO, it was quite popular in the early 2000s, but before that it was known as UCC, and George won their welterweight title in just his second pro fight. He defended the belt and was then matched up with Thomas Denny, a veteran of just about every regional promotion going, and also the only dude to lose on Bully Beatdown. Although the more I look into his career, the more it looks like they probably knew that was going to happen and just did it for the lols. Either way, George apparently went into the fight very sick, couldn't breathe, and was having headaches. He tried his hardest to finish him in the first, but he couldn't, and he could barely walk back to the corner. He told Christophe he couldn't go back out there. He was going to throw a head kick, and if that didn't work, throw in the towel. He looked at him and said, "George, I don't have any towels. Do you see any towels here? You're kicking his ass." George admitted he got so pissed off that his corner wanted him to die, apparently, that he went back out there and finished Denny. Crazy story, but he also said he respects what his coach did, and that was one of the scariest moments of his life. Number 4, Tim Boetsch and Matt Hume. Okay, so this Tim Boetsch fight against Yushin Okami has made just about every comeback list I think has ever been written on the internet. At the time, Okami had just fought Anderson Silva for the middleweight title and had only lost 3 out of his 13 UFC fights. He was definitely not to be fucked with. But Tim had just dropped to 185 and hadn't lost in the UFC yet at that weight class. It was the lumbering berserker versus the technical assassin. Think Bonesaw versus Spider-Man. But it wasn't playtime for Tim. In fact, Okami beat the shit out of him for 2 rounds. He almost finished him about 4 times, but Tim made it back to the stall for the 3rd round, where MMA pioneer Matt Hume did his best to rally him and told him like it is.
Once you catch him, you can finish him. You're breathing fine, Tim. You're good. Your heart rate's good. Everything's good. Okay? You just got to be super aggressive this round, Tim.
It wasn't a lot of words, but he still believed in Tim and let him know he can still win this fight. In one of the greatest comebacks in the sport's history, the Barbarian did as he was told, stayed aggressive, opened up on him immediately, and didn't let up the onslaught until the ref waved off the fight just 60 seconds into the round. Joe Rogan literally lost his mind, and Hume was totally right. If he could hit him, he could finish him. Number 3, Alex Pereira and Fernelli Feliz. So UFC 281 was great, right? And we had one of the biggest matchups of the year and a rematch at that. Alex Pereira and Israel Adesanya, they'd fought twice in kickboxing and Alex had managed to get the win on both occasions. But this was MMA, and 6 years later, there were a lot of variables at play, including the fact Izzy had been able to defend the middleweight title 5 times. Alex's experience was pretty limited compared to what Israel had already achieved. Could he really replicate those wins in MMA? After the build-up had reached almost unbearable levels, the fight finally started, and we saw Israel able to outmaneuver Alex and even incorporate some wrestling. Officially, he was up 3 rounds to 1 on the judges' scorecards heading into the 5th. But it wasn't over. Much like their second fight, Izzy hadn't been able to finish Alex, and the final round was about to start. Alex's corner grabbed hold of him and laid out his destiny.
One round for you to be a world champion. 5 minutes. Enough. Enough. You need to get to him. You need to approach him. Okay? You need to have knock him out. Listen, you need to knock him out.
He came out guns blazing in the 5th round and put it on Izzy until he could take take no more, making it 3-0 for Poatan. So we've got a new champion and looks like he's going to fight Hamzat. Call me crazy, but that's almost more interesting than the Izzy fight. Number 2, Derek Lewis and Bob Perez. At one point, the heavyweight KO king managed to put together a 6-fight win streak in the UFC. In fact, across 3 years between 2015 and 2018, he picked up 9 wins, 7 of them by knockout, with his only loss coming in the 4th round of an absolute fight of the night war with Mark Hunt. Eventually, he fought Daniel Cormier for the title, but he wouldn't have gotten that shot if it wasn't for his performance and the work of his corner just 3 months earlier. Alexander Volkov was riding a 6-fight UFC streak when he met Lewis at UFC 229, which, by the way, was the highest selling pay-per-view of all time, so talk about a platform to make a statement. Across the first 2 rounds, though, Alex proved to be the better martial artist on the feet, managing the distance and making it just a long night for Derek. He was definitely down 2 rounds with a UFC title shot slowly slipping away, and he desperately needed a finish, but it honestly looked like he didn't have anything left to give. He was even shaking his head as the round ended. But Bob Perez sat him down and implored him to go for the finish.
And I need you to listen like you never listened before, buddy. We are down 2 rounds, most important fight of your life. I need you to turn this up. We have 0 to lose at this point. We're down 2. Kill or be killed. I need to finish this fight.
Derek came out in the 3rd and weathered the storm until he found his moment and crushed Volkov with a perfect right hand. Derek won Performance of the Night, Comeback of the Year, and became world famous when he took his shorts off. Number 1, Leon Edwards and Dave Lavelle. Honestly, I think Leon Edwards had one of the hardest and longest journeys to a UFC title. He didn't get no respect, had to get 10 wins in one of the most stacked weight classes and still almost got overlooked. I mean, he almost fought Hamzat. And yeah, I suppose things like the last round of the Diaz contest didn't exactly help his case, but fans apparently don't care about the 4 rounds of complete domination before that. Either way, he finally got his title shot against one of the most dominant champions in the UFC at the time, Kamaru Usman, who looked like you need at least a couple of those heart-shaped herbs if you want to have a chance of beating him. The first round actually didn't go too badly for Leon, and he managed to out-grapple Kamaru, something no one in the UFC had managed to do, but as the fight wore on, the class of the champion began to show through, and as each round passed, Edwards seemed to fade more and more as the title shot he'd worked so long and so hard to get was slipping away. At the end of the 4th, it looked like Usman just needed to repeat the same game plan and he'd be adding another defense to his record. It was down to the corner and Dave Lavelle to deliver the kind of speech that would produce an epic Rocky story comeback.
Listen, stop feeling sorry for your fucking self. Well, come on then. What's wrong with you? You're too fucking down. You gotta pull the shit out of the fire.
Yeah, that'll do it. Leon came out in the 5th and finally let rip on the head kick he kept tucked away for the entire fight. Usman collapsed to the canvas. Leon Rocky Edwards had done the impossible. Okay, that's it for this list. As always, I want to give a shout out to the music man, Ben Rosette. That was his song you heard in our intro, which no doubt inspires you to do something MMA related every time you hear it. Thanks, Ben. Want to hear more? Check him out at Ben Rosette. I want to know what you think. Which speech was the most inspirational? Which one of these guys would you want in your corner? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. If you want to see more, we do 3 videos every week, but you have to subscribe or your PC will explode. I've been Balian. See you in the next one.